Let's do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome in to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM in your car. It was a great sports weekend. We had the Final Four on Saturday. And, the NIT, I don't know if anyone watched the NIT final. It went to overtime. Crazy ending there. We're going to have Seth Greenberg from ESPN on the show at 2:20 to talk about the Final Four. And, of course, the national championship game tonight. And, the Final Four just kind of ate up my whole weekend. If I wasn't watching the Final Four, I was at the dentist office because I just lived there, apparently, for some reason. So, outside of that, I had a good weekend. Hopefully, you had a nice Easter with your family. Hopefully, you ate some good food. I know I did. Had ham, have leftovers, so that's what I'm eating tonight. All right. I made a mistake on Saturday night, and I'm never, ever going to make it ever again. I almost made it tonight, and then I had to stop myself. Say, Jonathan, what are you doing? When they're getting the points, you always take Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, and Danny Hurley. I did not take Danny Hurley against Illinois on Saturday night. I took Illinois -1.5. Felt pretty good about it. Went through all the reasonings again before I, hit that little bet button. Illinois on the glass. Illinois has all this shooting, so on and so forth. And I just thought that they were going to ultimately out-talent UConn. But I forgot the dark magic that the UConn Huskies possess in the month of March and into the month of April. Because when they get to the Final Four, this team just flat out does not lose. And the dark magic was on full display on Saturday night. And whenever you have a matchup between two of the best teams in the country, like we did against Illinois and UConn on Saturday night, the game usually comes down to just a couple of things, and I thought that UConn beat Illinois for two reasons. The first one being that Illinois missed a lot of shots that they normally make. They had so many shots around the basket that they just couldn't seem to finish, shots that they normally make. I thought they did a good job of getting downhill. I didn't think UConn did a great job of containing the basketball. And if you had told me before the game started, hey, Jonathan, Illinois is going to get to the rim a lot, I'd be like, oh, love my chances. Because this is a team that has lived in the paint all tournament long. This is a team that loves to spread the floor, drive and kick. And I thought they were able to do that pretty effectively. They just couldn't convert. They missed multiple open threes. This was a team that shot about 35% from three on the year. They had multiple guys who shoot the ball well, who just had a bad shooting night. That's the simple reality of it. Their bigs couldn't finish around the basket. Their wings couldn't finish around the basket. Their guards couldn't finish around the basket. All over the floor, it was just a brutal shooting display from Illinois. And here is Illinois head coach Brad Underwood after the loss talking about the rough shooting night. Coach Underwood right there talking about the rough shooting night from his team in their loss to UConn on Saturday night. Just for reference, Keaton Wagler, a guy who's potentially going to be the 5th overall pick in the NBA draft. He was 2 of 10 from 3. He missed some looks that he normally makes. Tomislav Ivicic was 2 of 7 from 3. That's a big man who, shot in the upper 30% from 3 on the year. And they both, I thought, had plenty of good looks, and they combined to be 4 of 17 from 3. And when your shooters don't shoot the ball well, you're immediately fighting uphill. Illinois as a whole shot 6 of 27 from 3, and that's, not even including all the missed layups, as Coach Underwood highlighted in that clip. The number of times that the ball rolled around the rim and then spun out. I mean, just teasing them. So they shot 6 of 27 from 3, and they couldn't finish at the rim. Uconn shot 12 of 33 from 3. And immediately, when you get outscored by 18 points from 3, you're fighting an uphill battle, which happens to pretty much everybody over the course of March Madness. Because over the course of 6 games, even the best offensive teams in the country are going to have nights like Illinois did. And the best teams find a way to overcome the bad shooting. And Illinois plays a style that should allow them to overcome bad shooting nights. And they just couldn't get it done because UConn was too tough. There are multiple ways to overcome a bad shooting night. One of those ways is free throws. Illinois only made 3 more foul shots than UConn, even though they took 6 more foul shots than UConn did. You can overcome bad three-point shooting by being really active on the glass, which is something Illinois has done all year long. They only had 2 more offensive rebounds than UConn did. You can overcome bad three-point shooting by getting out in transition, scoring on the break. Illinois had 0 fast break points. That's because UConn only turned the basketball over 4 times. Meanwhile, Illinois turned it over 8 times. You can overcome bad three-point shooting by dominating the paint. Illinois only outscored UConn by 2 points in the paint. So all these things that Illinois usually does well that should allow them to overcome a bad three-point shooting night, they didn't do any of them. Illinois wasn't as dominant on the offensive glass as they'd been all year. UConn, I thought they were extremely tough on the boards. Illinois didn't get any easy baskets in the game. And this is another reason why UConn won the game. This is the second reason, the lack of easy buckets for Illinois. 0 fast break points. UConn was 124th in college basketball this year in turnovers per game. This is a team that is, liable to turn the basketball over, and they only committed 4 against Illinois. And that is discipline. The toughness and discipline of UConn was on full display. That is why they won the game. If you're going to beat UConn, you're going to have to simply out-execute them because you're not going to out-tough them to a win. You're not going to out-discipline them to a win. It is the Danny Hurley staple. And when you look at dynasties in other sports, this is exactly what you see. Every Nick Saban team was incredibly tough, and they were disciplined. The Bulls in the 90s were tough, and they were disciplined, with the exception of Dennis Rodman. The Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, they were always tough, and they were always disciplined. The Warriors in the 2010s, when they went on their run, tough and disciplined. You have to have those 2 things on a consistent basis to go on runs like this and potentially form a dynasty like UConn is on the verge of doing with a win tonight. 3 titles in 4 years. You're a dynasty. Simple as that, especially in the world of college basketball where winning the NCAA tournament once is incredibly difficult to do. And UConn is always going to be tough, and they're always going to be incredibly disciplined as long as Danny Hurley is the head coach there. And you can see the discipline and how they defended Illinois as well. This stat, mind boggling. And you can see it happening throughout the game. Illinois had 3 assists in the entire game. And this is an Illinois team that had one of, if not the best offense in all of college basketball. You have Keaton Wagler, a guy who has, been compared to, Tyrese Halliburton on multiple occasions. And he couldn't create for any of his teammates. They completely shut down any opportunity he had to find open players. He had 2 assists, and then Stojakovic had 1. Every other player for Illinois did not have an assist. It is so hard to win basketball games when you don't get easy buckets, when you can't, drop off a pass for an easy layup or get to the rim and kick it out for a wide open 3. To be fair, Illinois had a few of those opportunities and they just missed them. But you don't give up 3 assists having not played spectacular off-ball defense. And that is what UConn did. They stayed close to shooters. They knew when and how to rotate. That is a discipline thing. And UConn played with that discipline the whole game. And it led to almost no easy buckets for Illinois. So poor shooting from Illinois and incredible toughness and discipline from UConn led them to getting the win. And to be fair, Coach Hurley warned us about 4 years ago that this was on the way.
That's
It's coming, and it's here. It's absolutely here. And I just, man, what they've done is just incredible from what we've seen. Look, we haven't seen this since John Wooden at UCLA 20 years before I was born. In the last 4 NCAA tournaments, Danny Hurley is 18-1. 18-1. Hurley's record in the Final Four, 5-0, and he's 2-0 in national championship games. He is the best coach in the sport. And I have some pet peeves in terms of like how people talk to me or talk in general. Like whenever people say no offense, you just know that they're immediately going to say something that is going to offend you. Or I don't want to be rude, but so you're about to say something that is incredibly rude. Thanks for the heads up. I can't stand when people do that. Another thing on that list is so-and-so is the best at this, and it's not even close. When people say that, I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's kind of close. This is one of those exceptions. Danny Hurley's the best coach in the sport, and it's not close. Dusty May, excellent head coach. And in a matter of 2 years, he has taken a Michigan program that was dead in the water. Juwan Howard had run that thing into the ground. And, Dusty May shows up, revives it entirely to a point where there is a Michigan-dedicated alternate broadcast, which is really funny, by the way. They did that for Michigan, the Fab Five, because anytime you can put those guys on TV, people seem to jump at the opportunity. They didn't have one of those for UConn. Anyway. And Dusty May has completely revived the program. John Shire, what he has done at Duke in his short amount of time there has been impressive. You can run through all these guys that have, Nate Oates, if you want to throw him in there, Coach Cal at Arkansas, whoever you want to throw into the bucket of maybe the best head coach in the sport. They're not close to Danny Hurley and what he has done over the last 4 years. It is nothing short of incredible. He is the best coach in the sport, and this is an exception to the "and it's not even close" rule, because it's not. Even if he loses tonight, this is This is the worst team he's had in the last 4 years, and they're in the national title game. It's incredible what he's done. I don't need to say that anymore. UConn, they're going to have their hands full tonight. They are 6.5-point underdogs for a reason. It's because Michigan's really good. We saw what they did to Arizona, just dismantled a team that, people like me had said was going to win the national title. So they're going to have their hands absolutely full. But I'm telling you now, don't bet Michigan minus 6.5. I want to. I almost did. But do you really want to bet against Danny Hurley? I absolutely do not, even though they're about to play against an absolute wagon of a team right now in Michigan. My thoughts on Michigan absolutely crushing Arizona when we come back in 3 minutes.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, X, 1430 AM, the Indy Sports Ticket app, however you're tuning in. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. And hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully you got to celebrate Easter with your family. Hopefully you got to eat really good food. Hopefully you have leftovers for lunch today. All that good stuff. I spent my time at the dentist, watching college basketball, and hanging out with family. It was a great time, minus the time spent at the dentist office. And I just knew that this was going to happen. I should have said it. I didn't say it, so I can't take credit for it. Michigan beat the brakes off Arizona. And from time to time, you have matchups in any sport: football, basketball, baseball, badminton, whatever it is. And you're looking forward to it. And you're just like, man, like this game is going to be awesome. Can't wait. I'm going to clear the calendar. I'm going to order food. I'm going to tell my wife to not bother me for the next 2.5 hours because this game is going to be awesome. And then you sit down and you're like, oh, it's halftime and Michigan's up by 20. And this game feels like it's over. Michigan beat the brakes off Arizona. And they did it without the best player on their team. Yaxel Lindenborg played 14 minutes. That's it. They didn't need him at all to beat an Arizona team that appeared to possibly be the best team in college basketball before they ran into Michigan. And now everyone loves Michigan in this title game. Everyone loved Arizona against Michigan, and that went poorly. I'm just putting that in your mind before you just run off to bet Michigan minus 6.5. Those buildings in Vegas, they're not big, shiny, and bright for no reason. Now, I like Michigan minus 6.5. I'm not going to bet it because I'm not going to bet against Dan Hurley ever again. But man, they just looked incredible. Everything Michigan needed to do to beat Arizona, they did in abundance. They shot 12 of 27 from three. That's 44%. Anytime you shoot 44% from three, you immediately have an excellent chance to win whatever game you're playing. They outscored Arizona by 18 from behind the three-point line. For Arizona, that's not normally a big deal, right? Because Arizona, they want to play at the rim. They don't take very many threes. The issue is Michigan just didn't allow them to impose their will where they had all tournament long against, the first four teams that they beat. Arizona was third in the country in free throw attempts per game, shot about 27 foul shots a game. They only took 22 against Michigan, and they shot poorly, 15 of 22 from the foul line. Michigan was 13 of 16. So Arizona didn't outscore Michigan by a ton of points at the foul line, something that they normally do against their opponents. Arizona only out-rebounded Michigan by 4. Arizona had 44 rebounds to Michigan's 40. Arizona had 18 offensive rebounds, which is a lot, but Michigan had 11 of their own. So even though they weren't lights out on the defensive glass, they made up for it by giving themselves a pretty solid amount of second chance opportunities. So Arizona didn't dominate free throws. They didn't dominate the glass. Michigan matched Arizona's points in the paint. Both teams had 36 points in the paint. Arizona was never going to win that game if they allowed Michigan to match them in the points in the paint battle. Each team committed 19 fouls. Arizona had done a great job all tournament and all year long of getting their opponents in foul trouble. And they did that. Yaxel Lindenborg picks up 2 fouls early. Mara was in foul trouble in the first half. Elliot Cadeau finished the game with 4 fouls. But Arizona got into foul trouble too. Jaden Bradley picked up 3 fouls in the first half. Jaden Bradley, Mo Krivas, Braden Burries, and Toby Awaka all finished the game with 4 fouls. They fouled too much. Everything that we saw from Michigan was incredibly impressive. The shot making, the way that they rebounded, and so on. But the most special thing that we saw was their defense. This is the theme of the Final Four. Illinois only had 3 assists in their loss to Uconn. Arizona only had 5 assists. And this is a team that averaged about 16.5 assists per game this year. Michigan completely shut off any idea of team basketball, the interior passing from Arizona typically is incredibly impressive, was just non-existent in this game against Michigan. UConn and Michigan both did an excellent job of not allowing easy baskets, and it's why both of them won. Michigan could have won that game Saturday night without an outstanding shooting night. Again, 44% from three is insane, but they could have won that game without shooting the ball that well because of how well they defended. Arizona didn't get anything easy. Everything was tough. Every shot was contested. And so much of Arizona's offense was self-creation, giving the ball to Koa Pete at the top of the key and him dribbling the ball 5 times and then taking a tough shot, or throwing the ball to Mo Krivas on the block and watching him dribble into the 7'4" Mara and then throw up a hook shot, or watching, Braden Burries miss another jump shot, 4-16 from the field. How about we maybe, pass the ball a little bit more? And then you compare that to what Michigan was doing on offense, and it was the total opposite. Everything Michigan did led to a player moving toward the basket or a player getting an open catch, where they catch it and they have a clear view of the basket. They can now dribble, pass, or shoot. And when all three of those options are available to you every time you catch the basketball, then you're going to score a lot of points like Arizona did. Okay, their offense was just so much easier than Arizona's. And whoever gets easier shots, usually, not always, but usually wins. And Michigan got easier shots all game. That's why they blew out a really good Arizona team. And Michigan has now beaten every team that they've played handily. They beat Howard by 21. They beat a good St. Louis team by 23. They beat Alabama by 13. And the Elite Eight, they beat Tennessee by 33. And now they beat Arizona in the Final Four by 18. Do you know who that sounds like? Sounds like UConn 2 years ago. A UConn team that dominated everybody. Okay? 2 years ago, UConn beat Stetson in the first round by 39. They beat Northwestern in the second round by 27. They beat San Diego State in the Sweet 16 by 30. They beat Illinois in the Elite Eight by 25. Then they beat Alabama in the Final Four by 14. And they mopped it up by beating Purdue in the national title game by 15. As of right now, the UConn run, I think, was more dominant than Michigan's has been. But if Michigan beats UConn by 20 tonight, or just in a similar fashion with which they beat Arizona, then we could look up and be like, this is the most dominant NCAA tournament run we have ever seen. And it makes sense because this Michigan team, they're just an absolute unit right now. We're going to open up the phone lines, 317-228-1430. Call in with your thoughts on the Final Four. Call in with your thoughts on the national championship game tonight. Try to persuade me to bet Michigan minus 6.5. Good luck. Timothy Bowman over on X has been asking me about it, saying, can you ignore Michigan's 21.8 average margin of victory? When Dan Hurley has a team that's won 35 games this year, or 33 games, I can't remember which. When Dan Hurley has a team that's won over 30 games this year, yes, I can ignore Michigan's 21.8 average margin of victory. Volter over on X says he would consider it an honor to get his butt chewed out by Dan Hurley. John Buzzard chiming in over on X saying that, if we were to have postseason awards, Dusty May would probably get the award for best roster construction. Danny Hurley would get the award for the best coach. Nate Oates would get the award for the slimiest coach. Yeah, absolutely. And Mick Cronin no, Buzzard. Will Wade would get the award for slimiest coach for what he did to NC State, and then Mick Cronin would get the award for biggest pain. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the game tonight, I feel like I know what's coming. I feel like we're going to get another just dominant game from Michigan, where at halftime you're contemplating whether or not you're going to go to bed. Or for me, I'm going to be like, do I want to stay up and watch this, bludgeoning while eating ice cream? That's probably what I'm going to end up doing. But we'll see what ends up happening. But the game tonight, I don't really know what to expect, because you've got, this Uconn team that just hangs with everybody, and this Michigan team right now is just operating at a completely different level. 317-228-1430. That's the number if you want to call in and give me your thoughts on the Final Four and tonight's game. Buzzard is on the line. What's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really good. Hope you had a good Easter outside of the dentist situation, which is never fun. No, you cannot bet against Danny here. I just think that his team, 6.5 points, I would assume that would shrink as we get through today, or if it hasn't already. That just seems like too many points.
It actually was at 7.5 about an hour ago.
Oh, was it really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it really? Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. I think that so I've got it at 7.5 right now on FanDuel. It all depends on where you look.
Right.
I don't know. I think people are, everyone that was on the Arizona bandwagon has quickly jumped ship to Michigan. And I don't know, man. The more I see people bet Michigan, though, the more I want to bet on Uconn.
The biggest reason is I cannot see that Uconn team quitting, even if they're down 10, 15. I get to see them just going nuts at the end of the game to close that late. So I just don't think the game's going to end at 7. So, but I did have a question for you. I had some postseason awards, if you just to see if you agree with these.
Absolutely, let's do
So
it.
I had 4 of them. So I had Dusty May as the best roster construction artist.
Yes,
Danny Hurley, best coach.
absolutely.
Nate Oates, slimiest coach.
I think that's got to be Will Wade.
Will Wade, okay.
Yeah, I mean, what he did to NC State, just leaving in the middle of the night to go back to LSU.
Yeah, and then biggest pain is Mick Cronin at UCLA.
Yeah, he's a fish out of water out there. Like if he was a head coach of a team in like the Northeast or the Midwest,
Right.
I don't think people would mind it. But since he's in LA of all places, it just doesn't make sense for him out there,
Yeah, is UCLA the biggest, not the most non-basketball school?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning they are like supposedly a blue blood, but it doesn't seem that they have the fever of a blue blood, like a Kentucky.
Oh, you mean like the fans? Yes.
Oh yeah,
I completely agree. And look, everyone in LA is way too cool for anything, and I would know because
Right.
I've never been out there,
Right. So there you go. There's my. I don't want to go there either. There's the somewhat postseason awards from Buzzard. So there you go.
I like it. Thanks for the call, Buzzard.
All right, man. See you, John.
See ya. Yeah, I mean, I like the list. And Nate Oates could probably get an award for like loosest head coach. I mean, the guy's only had players like accused of murder, and then he had a player who got arrested this year, and then they had to appeal to a judge so he could travel out of state to play in March Madness. And then they tried to. They didn't try. They succeeded in getting a judge who is a donor to the School of Alabama to allow a guy who had gone pro to come back and play college basketball. There's an award out there for Nate Oates, and he probably would win slimiest coach if it wasn't for Will Wade. And what he did to North Carolina State, showed up for 1 year and then went back to LSU, the place that, fired him for cheating. And to be fair to LSU, you can't really cheat anymore. So good move on their part, I guess. Michigan getting set to play against UConn tonight. 8:50 tip. Don't like that. But hey, I'll stay up for it anyway. Michigan versus UConn. My thoughts on the Michigan-UConn game when we come back in 3 minutes.
Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 1430 a.m. as well. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully you had a happy Easter. Tonight, we've got the showdown. We got UConn playing against Michigan. And, man, I can't wait for this game. I'm not betting the game. I want to bet Michigan. But after Saturday, I'm never betting against Danny Hurley ever again. So I'm not betting the game. It's really that simple. Michigan is the better team. Michigan is the more talented team. Michigan's roster looks like they look like an NBA team when they're on the floor, and UConn looks like an older college team. Like that's like I'm so intrigued just to see the contrast between how both teams just look on the floor. But here's the thing: the better team doesn't always win, as UConn head coach Danny Hurley highlights right here. One game. This is the beauty of the NCAA tournament, as Coach Danny Hurley highlighted right there. The best team in the country doesn't always win the NCAA tournament. You just have to play one good game. That's all that has to happen. And UConn could shoot 50% from three tonight, and they could blow out Michigan. That is in the cards. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not. But it could. Yaxel Lindenborg has been the best player in the tournament this year for Michigan. He's not going to be 100% tonight. He rolled his ankle, potentially sprained his MCL. He's not going to be fully healthy. That matters. Elliot Cadeau could eat another piece of salmon covered in cashews and end up in the hospital tonight. I hope he doesn't. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. Someone could have ran down the hallway of the hotel that Michigan is staying at and blown an air horn at 2:30 in the morning. I don't think that happened. If it did, it would probably be on the news somewhere, but it could have. When it comes down to one game, anything can happen. That is the beauty of the NCAA tournament. It's why this tournament has more upsets than any other one. It's why Iowa was able to eliminate Florida in the second round. Everyone has a chance because anything can happen on any given night. And especially when Danny Hurley is your head coach. I'll take that guy for one game over anybody in a heartbeat. Like there's no question which head coach I'm taking if I only need to win one game, because he is, again, the best head coach in the sport. And the other thing about one game, someone just has to get hot for a night. And Alex Karaban, senior, he's won 2 national titles at UConn. He's playing in his 3rd national title in the last 4 years. That guy shot the ball poorly his last 2 games. Is this the night where he breaks out? Because water tends to find its level. Is this the game where the senior finally gets going and he shoots 5 of 7 from 3? And every one he hits is in every moment that UConn needs a bucket. It's very possible. And this game is simply going to come down to who shoots the ball better. Oh, Jonathan, what amazing analysis there. You mean the team that's going to win the basketball game is going to be the team that puts the ball in the basket more? Yes, I know. Breathtaking stuff there. Both of these teams run beautiful offenses. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. Okay? The Europeanification of college basketball has been on full display throughout the tournament, throughout March Madness, throughout really the entire season. And whenever I say that, I'm not only talking about this influx of European players. It's the style of offense that these teams are running as well. And I think that both UConn and Michigan are really good examples of these European offenses that have made their way into college basketball. And if you talk to college basketball coaches, they don't turn on the Spurs and like steal sets and plays from them. They're not stealing their sets from the NBA. They get all their sets from watching European games, from watching these European coaches. And it's part of why the offenses in college basketball have been so much better over the last couple of years. The players are not only older, the players are not only better, but the coaching is improved. It's improved by a lot. And I think that Dusty May and Danny Hurley are leading the charge with these European concepts on offense. And it's why these are two teams that generate so many good looks. And I expect for both teams to get really good looks because they've done it all year. Both of these teams, again, have done an excellent job of generating clean looks throughout the season. Here's the interesting thing. They have both also done an excellent job of limiting easy shots. It's amazing. The two teams playing for the national championship get easy shots and do a good job of not allowing their opponents to have easy shots. It's, who would have thought? UConn's opponents on the year barely averaged 10 assists per game. That's the 12th best mark in college basketball. Michigan's opponents average about 11 and a half assists per game. That's ranked 34th in college basketball. And both teams showed how great they are at forcing teams to play one-on-one in their Final Four wins on Saturday. Again, Illinois only had 3 assists against UConn. Arizona only had 5 assists against Michigan. I think either way, you have to like Michigan. They're my pick. I don't like it at all because I know who Danny Hurley is. But I think either way, you have to like Michigan however the game winds up going. Because I think that Michigan's more talented. I think that if UConn does an excellent job of blowing up their actions and forcing Michigan to play one-on-one, Michigan has plenty of players that can win off the bounce. So many. Like they have good guards. Their guards, I thought, were really good against Arizona. When in doubt, let's say that their guards can't win off the bounce for some reason. You've got Mara underneath the basket. And look, Terrace Reed Jr. is a monster. Started his career at Michigan. So going to be fun to watch him play against his old team. But as good as Terrace Reed is, you're going to stop the 7'4" guy from getting a layup? Good luck. So I know that UConn can do the same thing with Terrace Reed in terms of when things go awry offensively, having like a big man who you can throw the ball into on the block. It's just different. Even going back to Purdue a couple years ago, Purdue would play against these teams that had good big men who could score around the basket, and all of a sudden they're being defended by a guy who's 7'4". When you're 6'11", 7 foot, you just don't play very many games where you're smaller than the guy guarding you. And that's what's going to happen for Terrace Reed Jr. tonight, who's been a monster. Like, he's still going to be impactful. He's still going to score. He's still going to rebound. I just don't know if it's going to be as efficient as he normally does because he's going to have a 7'4" Spaniard defending him. Okay, if this is a game where, teams are kind of struggling to run their offenses and they're having to play a lot of one-on-one, I think you have to like Michigan. Now, if this is a game where both offenses can play cleanly, then you have to like Michigan shooting more than UConn's. It's an interesting thing because when you go by the numbers, you'll see that both teams shoot about 36% from 3 on the season. And so you see that and you're like, yeah, these teams are pretty similar in terms of their ability to shoot the basketball. But then you watch Michigan and you watch UConn and they don't feel similar in terms of their ability to shoot the basketball. UConn's streakier than Michigan is in terms of their shooting ability. So I like Michigan shooting more. I like their ability to attack downhill more. So I think either way, I think that you have to like Michigan in this game. And they're now a 7.5 point favorite for a reason. They do everything well. And they've steamrolled everyone on their way to this point in the year. And they're just clicking at such a high level right now that, if they blew out UConn tonight, I wouldn't be overly surprised by it just because of how good that team is, how much talent they have, and how they're playing the best basketball they've been playing all year right now. But we said the same thing about Arizona before they played against Michigan. So, it's going to be a great game tonight. And the biggest issue for Michigan is they're playing against Danny Hurley and a UConn program that just seems to always rise to the occasion in these big spots, especially over the last 4 years. Listen to what Coach Dusty May, Michigan head coach, had to say about UConn after their win over Arizona on Saturday night. Tonight, 8:50. I don't like that it's that late. Every time I say that, Chris shakes his head. I just
Why so late? Is it because we talked about the geographical thing? It's 8:50, Eastern time. There's no West Coast team, so why so late?
because even though there's no West Coast team, there's some 8-year-old in Los Angeles that probably wants to watch the game.
Okay, let's let the world revolve around this little 8-year-old that
Yeah.
has an early bedtime or something in LA.
I
But
mean,
there you go.
I look, to be like completely fair. I mean, if I lived out in LA and the game started let's say the game started at 7:30 our time, that would mean that the game would start before the people out on the West Coast are even off work. That's why, And I saw a thing, I forget her name. She blew up last March when what's her name? When Florida made their run, she's like a TikToker or whatever. I think she works in TV now in South Bend. She did a whole thing on it about how like 83% of the people live in like a certain time zone and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I just think that I get it. We should care about the people out west, but selfishly, I wish the game started at 4 o'clock Eastern. That way I could just go home and watch the game and then have the rest of the evening to put a show together. But as you said, the world sadly revolves around that 8-year-old in Los Angeles and not me. So
No explanation for that. But
yeah.
we're still going to watch it. It'll be fine. And it'll be over just in time for the 11 o'clock news to cover right after that. And then when Jonathan Smith really goes to work for tomorrow's show.
That's right. We get in the trenches at about 11 p.m. because for some reason my mind works better when I'm tired. It's a blessing and a curse. Who do you like tonight?
I'm still taking Michigan because not only because they're a favorite, because they're powerful. I've seen what they've done here and there over the season. I just think they're better built, but I always got to say, but UConn has the ability to overcome just like they have all through the tournament, man. So I'm picking Michigan, but I wouldn't be surprised if UConn took it either.
That's how I feel about it. Would you be more surprised if Michigan won by 20 or if UConn if UConn won the game?
Probably more surprised if UConn won the game.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's Danny Hurley. So
touche.
Who knows what's going to happen. But a lot of stuff going on. Final Four. The national title game is tonight. And we've got a new segment. We're gonna test drive it here. We're gonna hope that it goes well. We've got Seth Greenberg. He's coming on the show at 2:20 to talk about the Final Four and of course the national title game tonight. And then when we come back here in about 3 minutes, a new segment. We're gonna play JonathIN, JonathOUT when we come back in about 3 minutes.
do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of the real Jonathan Smith Show getting underway here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning into the show, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there, subscribe, hop in the YouTube chat, be part of that community. Maybe you're watching the show on X, __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 14:30 a.m. if you're driving around the Indianapolis area. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to, especially when we're doing something new. You know, I was talking to our boss the other day. He's like, take some big swings, try things out. I said, okay, Mike, I can do that. And I was texting with a buddy of mine from college who I used to do some radio shows with. I just kind of asked him, I was like, what are some segments that you remember us doing that were just a lot of fun? And he brought up JonathIN, JonathOUT, which is a blast. And so we're going to try it out now. Basically, there's a list of questions that Chris has for me. We got some audio in there as well that he's going to play. And then he's going to ask me, are you in or out on this idea or this thing happening? So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. JonathIN, JonathIN, JonathOUT.
Bottom line, are you in or you out?
What are you talking? In or out of what?
No time for questions, just action. In or out.
Okay, well, then I'm out.
I'm sorry, Jet. Actually, you're already in.
Okay, then why would you ask me?
Because I thought you would go, I'm in, Bob. And we would have had a really cool moment, but you kind of ruined the whole thing.
Solid. It's JonathIN, JonathOUT, and the first question of our new segment right here. In or out, Jonathan? In or out of the Europeification of college basketball? If you made this term up, Europeification.
Europeanification. There's no P in part on there. That's my bad. Yeah, like you said, it's a word that I made up, especially talking about like how we're getting all these, basketball players that have played, professionally in Europe coming over. We're getting all these European concepts especially on offense, coming over it and influencing the way that college basketball is being played. And I'm in on the idea of it, but not totally in. So like imagine it's like a warm summer's day and you're at a house with like a pool. I'm not like doing backflips off the diving board into the water. I'm like hanging out on like a floaty, still trying to figure out if I really want to get in the water or not. So I'm kind of in. I like it from the idea of, I think that the basketball is better because when you get guys coming over that just know how to play the game, like the difference in how they teach basketball here in the United States compared to how they teach guys how to play overseas is just, it's completely different. And so you get guys that come over and they know how to pass and they know how to, they know how to move the ball and just how to play and where to be. Whereas, a lot of people complain about the AAU circuit, even though the AAU circuit has produced some awesome American players. But you just get more guys that come over and know how to play. And so from that perspective, I'm in, but I don't like the idea of, this is going to sound maybe dumb. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of scholarships being taken away from American kids.
Fair enough.
So,
all right. On this next question, I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to play a clip, and then I'll ask you the question again.
Sure.
So, just to set this up, JonathIN or JonathOUT on this Michigan team being the best Michigan team ever. Here's a little clip I want you to hear first, though. right, Jonathan. I'm going to ask you the question again after hearing that clip. Ready? Jonathan, JonathOUT on this Michigan team being the best Michigan team ever.
Totally in. Go back to that warm summer day where we have a pool. I'm doing like cannonballs off the diving board. I'm so in. Like, I know that everyone loves the Fab Five. And anytime Michigan's good at basketball, we have to put the Fab Five absolutely everywhere for an understandable reason. They impacted the sport of basketball in a really big way. I know for some reason our YouTube audience, they can't hear that clip for some reason. But one of the questions was, if this team played the Fab Five, what would happen? This team would destroy the Fab Five. It wouldn't be close.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be close. Just because when you have a bunch of 23-year-olds playing against a bunch of 18-year-olds, usually the 23-year-olds win. And then, for some reason, we just completely ignore this in basketball, but we acknowledge it as true in every other thing that happens. Like, things change and they evolve, and they usually get better. Like, I know that there's people out there who think that, like, 90s basketball is better than current day basketball. It's just not true. And so I think this team would dog walk the Fab Five. And so, yeah, I think this would hands down be the best Michigan college basketball team ever if they're able to win tonight, because you have to win the national title to be able to claim that. And, I mean, again, if they win tonight by 20, they're going to have a real argument that this is the most dominant March Madness run we've ever seen, topping what we saw from Uconn 2 years ago.
Fair enough. Good analysis on that as well. I'm going to ask the next question, play you another clip, just like we did on the last one, and then I'll ask you the question again, this time, Jonathan, or JonathOUT, on Uconn covering the spread. And we kind of talked about this a little earlier. All right. Being speaking earlier at a press conference. Going back to JonathOUT. In or out on Uconn covering the spread tonight?
I keep going back and forth on this because, we were talking earlier, and it's like, would you be more surprised if Uconn won the game or if Michigan won by 20? I think I'd be more surprised if Uconn won the game. But at the same time, I keep going back to Alex Caravan, who just has really struggled. This is a guy who's played a lot of basketball, senior, and like against Duke, he was 2 of 10 from the field and 1 of 6 from 3. Against Illinois, 1 of 8 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. And I'm just kind of waiting on him to explode. Pause. And sorry. And
Keep it together,
I think he's gonna explode all over Michigan tonight. And so I'm waiting on him to have a big night shooting the basketball. And if that happens, then I think if that happens tonight, I think UConn's gonna have a real chance to win the game. I think I'm gonna flip from what I said earlier. I'm gonna go in on UConn covering the spread. I don't feel great about it. So, like, to go back to the pool analogy, I'm like sitting on the side with like my feet in, so I'm not all the way in, but like I'm in enough that I can say that I'm in. So yeah, I'm going to take UConn to cover the 7.5 points, especially at the line. If it keeps going up, like if it gets to 9.5, absolutely, I think that they cover that. But if it goes back, if it ends up working its way back down to like 6.5 or 5.5, then I would probably take Michigan.
Fair enough. JonathIN is what's happening right now, basically in and out in the world of Jonathan Smith's head. Jonathan, in or out? If Michigan beats UConn, this is the most dominant tourney run ever.
If they have to win by a certain number of points, and so like if they win by 20, I would argue yes. If they win by 20, yes. But if they win the game by like 7, or they or it kind of hovers around whatever the line winds up being, then I would say no, because I mean like that UConn team, they dogged everybody. I've got their win totals somewhere in this document that has a million words on it. But like they beat here it is right here. So they beat Stetson by 39. They beat Northwestern by 27. This is UConn's run a couple of years ago. They beat San Diego State by 30 in the Sweet 16. They beat Illinois by 25 in the Elite 8. They beat Alabama by 14 in the Final Four, and then they beat Purdue by 15 in the national title game. And then you compare that to what Michigan's done. Howard by 21, St. Louis by 23, Alabama by 13, Tennessee by 33 in the Elite 8, and now Arizona by 18. I mean, I think that, I think 20 is the number. If they win by 20 or more, then you can say, yes, this is the most dominant March Madness run ever. But if it's by like 11 or something like that, then I think I would continue with UConn's.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I also included a couple of my own like little random things because nothing else happens in my brain all day but randomness, right? So I have a lot of thinking space because my head's so big. So JonathOUT, outside of the sports world, let's talk about a little bit Easter and eggs. There's a lot of leftover people, hard-boiled eggs, whatever. Are you a fan, JonathOUT, on deviled eggs?
All the way in.
All the way
I
in.
love deviled eggs.
No kidding.
They're so good. It is the best side for Thanksgiving. When they bring them out at Easter, I'm all about them. And I have a story about deviled eggs. And so my dad's side of the family, super picky. They'll only eat certain things. And the pinnacle of the pickiness is my grandma. She won't eat mayonnaise. She won't eat anything. And so my mom makes amazing deviled eggs.
Oh, yeah?
She won't tell my grandma what she puts in them because she knows as soon as she tells her, my grandma will just never eat them ever again, even though she's liked them for years.
Okay.
Which is insane to me. I feel like if you like something, you should just keep eating it. But hey,
sure.
I don't know.
What all goes in deviled eggs anyway? Just off of I think mayonnaise is in there, some kind of relish, or what are we talking about here?
Mayonnaise and mustard. Outside of that, I have no idea.
Those sound like two things that don't go with eggs, but hey, to each their own, man.
Well, mayonnaise are eggs.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that either. I didn't know that for a long time. And
See,
then
you're learning stuff on the Jonathan Smith show too.
I told Amelia, I was like, I don't like mayonnaise. She's like, but you like eggs. I was like, what does that have to do with mayonnaise?
The two don't go together.
They are. They're eggs. I was like, oh.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I will only eat them if there's no mustard or mayonnaise or whatever else goes in there. I think they call them naked. Even taking the hard-boiled yolk out or whatever.
So you only eat like the
whites.
shell of it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
All right, next one. Continuing with the Easter process, since it was just yesterday, I'm really curious, JonathOUT, on buying Easter candy now that it's on discount today for Halloween trick-or-treaters coming up later this year. Because some people do that.
On Easter candy for 6 months.
Some people will stock up on Easter candy and hand it out at Halloween.
That's amazing.
How do you
I didn't
feel
know
about
people
this?
did that.
Yeah.
I think I'm personally, the idea I'm in on, but personally, I'm out on it. Because there's no way I'm keeping candy in my apartment for 6 months and not eating all of it.
Fair enough.
It's not happening.
Fair enough. That was a simple one. Yeah, me neither on that one. A couple more for you. JonathIN, JonathOUT segment happening right now with the Final Four concerts happening over the weekend. You know, there was 21 Pilots on Friday, Zach Brown Band Saturday, Post Malone last night. And if you saw, like, watch the news, people were there like 4 and 5 hours before
Jeez.
the gates even opened to get to the very front. And from what I saw, there wasn't a bad spot to stand to see the show. JonathIN, JonathOUT, are you showing up early at a free show to be up in the front row ever for anybody?
This is where I'm spoiled. Okay.
Okay.
So my concert experience growing up was different than I think a lot of people's. So there was a guy in our church who went on American Idol, did really, really well. And so the only concerts I would ever go see were the concerts with him in it. And he just kind of set it up for us. He was like, you guys show up whenever you want, come hang out backstage, don't wait in line. We'll play ping pong and do stuff. And then whenever the show starts, you can just walk out to your floor seats right here.
Sure.
And so that's been my concert experience every time I've gone to a concert. And so absolutely not. I'm not standing in line for 5 hours even to get in. Like there's no I'm not waiting in line that
Fair
long.
enough. Nothing to take away from dedicated fans, but no, not for me either.
Hey, you can be more dedicated than me. Congratulations. I'm glad for you.
Last question I got for you, JonathIN, JonathOUT today are about reels, because it seems like a lot of times now how we talk to our friends and stuff is mostly just sharing reels from
Right.
whether it be Instagram, X, or whatever. Between you and the wife, how often are we in or out on sharing reels with each other?
And I send Amelia so many reels. It's honestly,
Does she have like a stack of them that she has to watch them
Oh,
all at
yeah.
once?
and I can never just send one. It's like I have like a dedicated. It's like I'm gonna scroll on my phone for 15 minutes. It usually ends up being like 30, and like everyone that I see, I'm really proud of my algorithm. Like it's perfect. It's like everything I see, I find funny or interesting, or I find worthy of sending to someone, and it's usually her.
It's crazy how custom the algorithm is.
It is. And what's amazing is like if you want to change it, you just got to pick up your phone and say whatever you want to be on there. And so, yeah, I'm all about it, man. I sent her a lot of reels.
Awesome. Awesome. That is
Bottom
JonathIN,
line, are
JonathOUT
you
right
in?
there. New segment.
Or are you out?
What are you talking? In or out of what?
No time for questions, just action. In or out.
Okay, well then I'm out.
I'm sorry, Jet. Actually, you're already in.
Okay, then why would you ask me?
Because I thought you would go, I'm in, Bob. And we would have had a really cool moment, but you kind of ruined the whole thing.
JonathIN, JonathOUT. That was fun. We'll do it again. I had a blast doing it. When we come back here in about 3 minutes, the phone lines are open 317-228-1430. Call in with your thoughts on tonight's national championship game between Michigan and Uconn. Again, that number is 317-228-1430. We'll be back in about 3 minutes to talk more about tonight's Michigan versus Uconn game.
it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM if you're driving around the Indianapolis area. And I was talking to Chris during the break. I'm just, this is the fourth show, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The fourth show we've done. I'm yet to hear from C. Fitch and Gritty. And I can't believe it. I feel a little bit betrayed. C. Fitch, I know you're listening. You texted me as soon as the news dropped that I was coming back. So I don't know what's going on. 317-228-1430. If you have thoughts on the Final Four or the national title game tonight, or really just thoughts on anything, feel free to call in. So I saw this story over the weekend, and I immediately was just not surprised by it, but I knew as soon as I saw it that this was something that I wanted to talk about. Every player, every single one, every player for Indiana State, their basketball program, is transferring except for one. And, I saw some people freaking out about it. And then I started looking at, like their roster, who's leaving, all that kind of stuff. They went 11-21. Good. I'm glad they're all leaving. And they went 4-16 in their conference. Like, they should be overjoyed that everybody left that Indiana State basketball program. Like, they might actually be able to be good this next year. You now have a clean slate in terms of who you want to bring in, and you have an opportunity to actually build something worthwhile. Okay? And this is one of the, I think it's honestly a really underrated part of the transfer portal. These teams have opportunities that if you don't like your players, encourage them to transfer and you can start fresh. I think it's a real advantage. And you say, okay, we tried to build our roster this way. That didn't work in our conference or, anything like that. And so, let's move everybody on and let's try to rebuild this in a better way. Sometimes completely tearing something down is the best way to go about it. Chris Ballard and the Colts don't really seem to understand that, but sometimes completely starting over is the best way to move forward. So I think Indiana State should be overjoyed at the idea that, of everybody leaving their team that went 11-21 and 4-16 in their conference. So coming up here in about an hour or so, we're going to have Seth Greenberg on from ESPN. We're going to talk about the Final Four and, of course, tonight's national title game between Michigan and Uconn. And the more I look around, the more I see people taking Michigan to not only win, but also to cover. And I just, the more I see it, the more I want to take UConn. And that's really the only reason why I want to take UConn. Because when you look at Michigan, that team is just operating at such a high level right now. You can make an argument that this is the best 5-game stretch that they have played all year. All year. They just continue to roll through people. And when you go back to that game where they beat Arizona, they did it without the best player on their team. Yaxel Lindenborg played 14 minutes. That's it. They didn't need him at all, really, to beat an Arizona team that looked like the best team in college basketball before they ran into Michigan. And so I understand why people want to take Michigan to cover. But UConn, a lot of people liked Illinois to beat UConn, and then Danny Hurley showed up and was like, I don't know why we're underdogs. We beat them by 13 earlier this season. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to bet against Danny Hurley, but if you can, feel free to lose money. The bet may hit, but I wouldn't. You're going to be sweating bullets the entire way. I think tonight's game is going to be pretty close. I think that's kind of where I've landed on this, because you have this Uconn team that is just older. They've got guys who have been there, and the head of that snake, in terms of the he's been there before kind of guys, is Alex Caravan. 6'8" forward, who's, probably going to have a chance to play in the NBA because he's 6'8" and can kind of play defense, and he's a good shooter. Except for right now. When you look at, the first 3 games that he played in the NCAA tournament, he played he played really well. Against Furman, shot 9 of 16 from the field. He was 4 of 9 from 3. And then they played UCLA, and he was 9 of 16 from the field, and he was 4 of 8 from 3. And then they played Michigan State, where he was 6 of 12 from the field and 3 of 8 from 3. And then something happened against Duke, where he shot 2 of 10 from the field and 1 of 6 from 3. And then that just continued against Illinois, where he shot 1 of 8 from the field and 1 of 7 from 3. I think he's going to have a really big game. I think he's due, considering that he's 2 of 13. He's 2 of 13 from 3 in his last 2 games. And this is a guy who's shooting at about, 38% from 3 on the year. He's a 38% career 3-point shooter. And this is a guy who's been a major contributor for UConn over the last 4 years. He has an average. He's played around 30 minutes per game every year from the time he was a freshman. This is a guy who can really shoot the basketball. And I think he breaks out of his slump tonight in a really big way. And we're looking up, and we're all looking at each other at halftime like, is this going to be the Alex Caravan game where he shoots 6 of 8 from 3 and single-handedly swings the game in UConn's favor? Because I do think UConn is going to need something like that to happen tonight. They need an anomaly of a performance from either one of their guys. Maybe it's, Braylon Mullins, who late in the fourth quarter just, has ice in his veins, right? As the kids like to say. He hit the dagger against Illinois. He obviously hit the game-winning shot against Duke. So maybe one of those guys gets hot. Solo Ball, I thought, played really well against Illinois. I just like his ability to just create. He didn't turn the ball over. He was 3 of 7 from 3. That's another guy who can really shoot it. Maybe he's the one who gets going. But ultimately, the guy who UConn has to have play well is Terrace Reed Jr., the former Michigan Wolverine. This guy's a monster. 6'11" senior, transferred in to UConn, and I love his game. Love his game. Plays really hard, rebounds, and like when you look at the front line for UConn, you don't think I don't think that they have a ton of great rebounders outside of Terrace Reed Jr. And they played against Michigan State, and he held his own on the glass. They played against Duke, and he rebounded really well. And then they played against Illinois. And before the game, Illinois was, doing what college guys do, running their mouths a little bit. He hasn't seen any bigs like us. And then he just had 17 points and 11 rebounds and played really well in that game. He has to play well tonight. I think he's the only absolute for UConn where I expect him to play incredibly well, even though he's matched up against the 7'4" Spaniard in Mara. So I think that UConn needs a normal performance from him where he's going to score anywhere between 15 and 20 on really good efficiency, and he rebounds well. And then they need a Caravan or a Mullins or a Solo Ball or somebody like that to really shoot the ball efficiently in order to give UConn a chance against the Michigan team that, again, is just rolling right now. And I feel like Michigan is absolutely going to get some sort of performance like that from one of their players, whether it's, McKinney off the bench, maybe Mara has a really big game. Elliot Cadeau shot the ball poorly. Part of me wonders if they just wanted him to get the ball up on the glass and give Mara an opportunity to clean some plays up. But he's due for a nice shooting game after what we saw. He was like 4 of 14 or something like that against Arizona, so he's due for a big game. Maybe it's Yaxel Lindenborg. Maybe he limps out there, sprained MCL, bruised up ankle from having rolled it so horribly. And then you look up and he has 20. So I feel like Michigan is definitely going to get a performance like that from somebody just because of the amount of talent and depth that they have. The question is really going to be, does UConn have another guy step up and produce in a big way? That absolutely has to happen for them. I don't think Terrace Reed is strapping the UConn roster to his back and carrying them over this Michigan mountain. I don't think that's happening. He's going to need a little bit of help. They need Alex Caravan to not have another horrible shooting night, and I think he actually shows up in a really, really big way for them. I'm going to go with UConn covering just because I think there's way too many people taking Michigan, and when in doubt, you bet against what everybody else thinks because those buildings in Vegas are not big and shiny and nice and super expensive for no reason. So we're going to take UConn. Last time I checked, that line was sitting at about 7.5. Let's see. Has it moved? It's moved back down. It's down at 6.5 now. So more people hopping on UConn. The player point totals are interesting. Vegas is telling you that Terrace Reed is going to have a nice game. He's got the best odds, or I guess the worst odds, the best odds. Yeah, the best odds to score 10 in the game at minus 550. Mars second at minus 325. So Vegas is telling you that Terrace Reed is going to have a nice game. It's going to come down to your Braylon Mullins and your Alex Caravan and your Solo Balls. Can the other guys for UConn knock down open threes? That's been the biggest question for them all year. If they shoot the ball well, they're going to have an excellent chance to beat Michigan. The question is this going to be one of those nights where UConn shoots it well, or is it going to be one of those nights where they're scrapping and clawing for every bucket? We'll talk more about the Final Four and how these teams got to the national title game when we come back in about 4 minutes.
it may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Yeah. What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the game on X__Jonathan Smith. Follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to, especially when we're, keeping it fresh, having a good time here at Indy's Sports Ticket. So it's been great. We've talked about all sorts of stuff. We talked about Alex Caravan and the potential for him to explode all over Michigan with threes and things. And we've talked about what is it going to take for UConn to beat this juggernaut of a Michigan team. And I want to go back and talk about how these teams got here, because a lot of times the answer to how is this team going to win, it is rooted in how they got to where they are. And when it comes to UConn, they beat Illinois for two reasons, I think. The first one being that Illinois missed a lot of shots that they normally make. They had so many shots around the basket, and they just couldn't finish. Shots that they normally make just seemed to roll out of the rim. And this is a team that lived in the paint all tournament long. This is a team that was predicated offensively on their ability to get to the rim. A lot of drive and kick. A lot of Stojakovic just putting his head down and getting to the rim. And when they got to the rim and they kicked out for three, they missed these open threes. And this was a team that shot about 35% from three on the year, as a team more than capable of knocking down open shots. And they just had multiple guys who can really shoot it who had bad nights. Here is Illinois head coach Brad Underwood talking about the loss and the rough shooting night. Coach Underwood right there talking about the rough shooting night against UConn and their loss. Keaton Wagler, one of the best, or Wagler, excuse me, one of the best freshman guards in the country, only shot 2 of 10 from three. Tomislav Ivicic was 2 of 7 from three. And they both had plenty of good looks. These are two of the better shooters on their roster as a whole. Illinois only shot 6 of 27 from three. UConn, they shot 12 of 33 from three. And when you get outscored by 18 from three, you are immediately fighting uphill. Here's the thing. Over the course of 6 games, even the best offensive teams in the country are going to have nights like Illinois did in the Final Four against UConn. The best teams find a way to overcome that. Illinois plays a style that should allow them to overcome poor shooting nights, and they couldn't get it done. UConn was just too tough. There are multiple ways to overcome a bad shooting night. One of those ways is free throws. Illinois only made 3 more free throws than UConn, even though they took 6 more foul shots than UConn did. You can also overcome a bad three-point shooting night by being active on the glass. Illinois only grabbed 2 more offensive rebounds than UConn did. You can overcome a bad three-point shooting night by getting out in transition and scoring on the break and getting some easy buckets. Illinois didn't have a single fast break point. That's because UConn only turned the basketball over 4 times. Illinois, on the other hand, turned the basketball over 8 times. You can overcome a bad three-point shooting night by dominating the paint. Illinois only outscored UConn by 2 points in the paint. Illinois was not as dominant on the offensive glass as they had been all year. UConn was extremely tough on the boards. UConn was incredibly tough defensively. Illinois didn't get any easy buckets in that game. Even though they were missing shots at the rim, all of them were contested. That's ultimately why Illinois struggled to make shots. They didn't get anything easy. 0 fast break points, which is just like that's almost unheard of in college basketball. UConn, going into that game against Illinois, they were 124th in college basketball in turnovers per game. This is a team that can and will turn the basketball over. They only committed 4 turnovers against Illinois. That is discipline. And the toughness and the discipline of UConn was on full display in that game. And that is the other reason why they were able to beat Illinois. Illinois didn't make shots, and UConn was tougher and more disciplined than Illinois was. If you're going to beat UConn, Michigan tonight, if you're going to beat UConn, you have to out-execute them because you're not going to out-tough them and you're not going to out-discipline them to a win. It is the Danny Hurley staple. They are tough and they are disciplined. That's why they're going on this run. When you look at dynasties in other sports, this is what you see. Nick Saban's teams were always tough and disciplined. The Bulls in the 90s were always tough and disciplined, with the exception of Dennis Rodman's telling Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson, hey, I need a break. I need to go to Las Vegas for a few days, and then not coming back for a week. Outside of that, the Bulls, tough and disciplined. The Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, tough and disciplined. The Warriors in the 2010s were tough and disciplined. You have to have those two things on a consistent basis to be as consistently good and to go on runs like UConn has over the last 4 years. And as long as Danny Hurley is the head coach at UConn, they are going to have those two things in place. And you could see their discipline, UConn's discipline, and how they defended Illinois as well. Illinois had 3 assists in that game. That's just insane. Absolutely insane. Part of that was the poor shooting from Illinois. You know, they'd find guys who were open for 3 and they would leave it long or short or, you know, whatever it ended up being. And the other part of that was UConn just playing great defense, staying attached to shooters, knowing when and how to rotate, knowing who to help off of and who not to help off of. That is scouting. That's a Danny Hurley thing. And that is discipline. That's a Danny Hurley thing. You're not playing for that guy unless you know how to follow your assignments, unless you know how to follow the scouting report and how to follow the game plan. And UConn played with that level of discipline the entire game. And it led to no easy buckets for Illinois. Poor shooting from Illinois and incredible toughness from UConn. Those are the 2 reasons why UConn was able to win that game. And to Coach Hurley's credit, he warned us a few years ago. Here he is giving us this warning. Yeah, it's here. I remember when he said that, everyone kind of laughed or whatever, and then they just went on to win the national title, even though they were a 4 seed. I mean, just incredible stuff from him, and he is hands down the best coach in the sport. In the last 4 NCAA tournaments, Danny Hurley's record is 18-1. He's 5-0 in the Final Four, and he's 2-0 in the national title game. Okay, he is the best coach in the sport, and there is not a close second. And that's like one of my pet peeve sayings. Like, there are certain things whenever people start a sentence. Like if they say, no offense, but like you just know that they're about to say something offensive. Hey man, like I don't want to be rude, but so you're about to say something rude. Whenever, that word but when improperly placed, not a fan of it. It bothers me. Okay. And then the saying of so and so is the best at this and no one else is close. That's usually not true. Like if someone said, Jonathan, Michael Jordan's the best basketball player ever, and it's not close, I would say, I agree, but I don't know if it's not close. There's been a lot of other basketball players that were really good and so on. This is one of those exceptions. Danny Hurley is the best head coach in college basketball. He is the best coach in the sport. He evaluates talent incredibly well. He plans for opponents incredibly well. Everything that a head coach needs to do to win in this age of college basketball, Danny Hurley does at an incredibly high level. And there are a lot of other good coaches in college basketball. I think John Shire belongs on that list. Dusty May belongs on that list. Ben McCollum at Iowa, he belongs on that list. But there is no one that even sniffs who Danny Hurley is as a basketball coach. And I know that there's people that don't like him. I love him. I'd play for that guy in a heartbeat. That dude is super competitive. And whenever you watch him, all of his anger, and there's a lot of it, it's come flying out of his ears. It is always directed at the officials, and it is always directed at the crowd. It is never directed at his players in a negative way. Obviously, if someone misses an assignment, he's going to lay into him, and he should, because you shouldn't miss your assignment when you've played 38 games this year. You should know what you're doing at this point. He has an incredibly high standard for himself and for his players, and that is why they are in the national championship game once again. If you want to be good at something, you need to expect a lot out of yourself. Okay? No one becomes great at anything by being okay with average. And Danny Hurley is not okay with average. He does everything at an incredibly high level, and it's why he's the best coach in the sport. No way around it. It is really that simple. Okay? So we're going to have Seth Greenberg of ESPN. He's going to join the show coming up at about 2:20. We'll talk about the Final Four. We'll get into, obviously, the national title game tonight. Can't wait to have him on. Really insightful, smart guy. Does an excellent job on ESPN breaking the games down. Volter asks over on X if I'm going to talk about the Indy 500 in May. Maybe. We'll see. I'm not a big racing guy. I never have been. And when it comes to the Indy 500, everyone that I know that goes never talks about the race. Someone should poll people leaving the Indy 500. You should just ask, who won the race? I would be willing to bet less than half of the people leaving the Indy 500 would be able to tell you who actually won the race. Because people don't go to the Indy 500 to watch. Like, they don't. They go to party and to have a good time, which is fine. Like, that's part of the racing culture. And everyone describes the Indy 500 to me as, quote, a party with 400 other people, or 400,000 other people. Excuse me. If only 400 people showed up to the Indy 500, that'd actually be kind of funny. I would actually laugh.
Actually, that'd be another COVID year, I'm sure. Like 400
Seriously.
with 6 foot distancing and all that.
That'd be nuts. And so, yeah, like whenever that's whenever people go to the 500, that's what I hear about. And so, I mean, what I would really like to happen is for people to call in May with crazy Indy 500 stories, because there's no way that there's that many intoxicated people in that space and you aren't walking out of there with crazy stories year in and year out. Like, it's just like that has to be what happens. Speaking of the Indy 500, I get to run around the track here in a few weeks.
That sounds exhausting.
I'm running the half marathon.
Oh, okay.
And we'll see, man. We'll see if I finish.
Man, that's a lot.
It's going to be brutal. But Seth Greenberg joining the show here in about 25 minutes. When we come back at the top of the hour, 2 o'clock, we are going to get into Michigan how they ended up here and what they need to do to beat UConn tonight.
do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, it's hour number 3. Thanks for watching, whether that's on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app. We have breaking news. Do we have a sounder for breaking news? We might.
Put the banner up on the thing. That's all I got right now.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I thought we had a hotkey for it.
No.
What? We don't have any alarm? Nothing?
No, we're gonna have to get one. We
We
can do booty cheeks though.
That works.
Booty cheeks!
Yeah, that's pretty good. We have breaking news. So I want to double check this because there's no way.
It was all of a sudden it just came up on ESPN.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to confirm this.
I just read something about it. Apparently, North Carolina is set to hire Mike Malone, former Denver Nuggets head coach, to be their next head coach. Out of left field, especially when I consider the fact that I just read a thing on how they were about to do a full blitz going hard at Billy Donovan, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, 2-time NCAA, champion of Florida, back to back, with Joakim Noah and Al Horford and those guys. I am stunned. Again, this completely coming out of left field, and I don't like this at all. I think this is a terrible hire because there are certain places that tough and demanding works, and that's places like the Northeast and at Uconn, where Danny Hurley coaches, where you're not pulling in the cream of the crop or really have the opportunity to bring in the best players and things like that. North Carolina, you are immediately at the top of a lot of the best players in the country. You are immediately at the top of their list. And Michael Malone, what is his pitch going to be to these guys? I don't like it at all. I think that Michael Malone is a really good coach, but I think he's an NBA coach. Even with Danny Hurley, whenever you hear the guy talk, you can tell that there's some charisma there and that he's got a personality. Alex Caravan called Danny Hurley one of the funniest people he's ever met during his media day yesterday. And I don't know how much NBA stuff you watch. You probably don't watch much of the NBA coverage on ESPN because it's terrible. I catch glimpses of it. Mike Malone's got no personality. I mean, he comes from that, Tom Thibodeau tree. And I think this is going to go so horribly for Mike Malone. I really can't believe it. This is the best that North Carolina could do. You couldn't poach one of the better coaches in college basketball. You couldn't convince for, Billy Donovan to come down from Chicago, where he's doomed to win 38 to 44 games every single year. I can't believe this. I think this is a terrible hire. And wow. Chris, do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't know the guy very well, but I did not see that coming at all. That's kind of what grabbed me. I was thinking, if North Carolina would do something like bring in Bill Belichick, why not bring what's a dude that owns the Knicks that coached?
Tom, you talking about Tibbs?
No, but that wouldn't have been a bad one either. I'm thinking of he coached the Lakers, and I'm talking about the big coach for years. I forgot his name at the moment. Blank. But surprising for sure. I know that would have been far-fetched and long shot, but I would have seen that happen more than this.
Yeah, there's a long list of guys that I would have picked before I picked Mike Malone to be the new head coach at Carolina. Um, I just, man, like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's just a shame because like there's just certain brands that when they're good, it makes a sport better. Like I hate the Yankees and I hate the Dodgers, but when they're good, Major League Baseball is just better. And North Carolina is one of those brands in college basketball where the brand's just better. You know, like I mean, all right, let me think. I mean, just the list of guys. I figured that they would have hired a guy like Chris Beard before they would have hired, a guy like Mike Malone, maybe a Brian Dutcher, the head coach at San Diego State. Figured that they would have hired a guy like him before Mike Malone, Nate Oates, Todd Golden. I legitimately, I think I would have been less surprised if they had hired Matt Painter, and Matt Painter was never going anywhere. I would have been less surprised if they, brought Brad Underwood over. I know he said that Illinois is his dream job in those things, but just because someone says that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. I would have been less surprised if they brought Ben McCollum over from Iowa. That hire would have made a lot of sense. There's just I can't believe it. Mike Malone lands what is probably the best college basketball job in the country, and he's got no college basketball experience. Now, one of the good things about Mike Malone and bringing in an NBA guy is you have a guy who constructs rosters on a yearly basis. You have a guy who when he was in Denver, wanted to have a bigger say in terms of the free agent decisions and who they brought in and who they sent out and all of those things. He's going to have full control at North Carolina to do whatever he wants, to go bring in whoever he wants. The difference, though, between college basketball and the NBA, I think is canyons wide. Like they're not even the same sport when you just look at the styles with which these teams play. And we're going to see a completely different side of Coach Malone because we're going to have to, I think, in order for him to be successful. So Mike Malone is the new head coach at North Carolina. I don't like it at all for the Tar Heels, but I mean, I guess at some point you have to trust the decision makers to kind of do, whatever it is that they're going to do. So,
By the way, Buzzard, I was thinking of
you said Phil
Jackson.
Phil Jackson.
He not Pat Riley. I know it would have been far fetched. Phil Jackson. He's like in the front office of the Knicks now. But I was like, if North Carolina can bring in Bill Belichick on the football side, why not bring in Phil Jackson?
I mean, this doesn't feel far off. I can't believe it. But hey, maybe I'll be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But I don't like this at all, man. Like you mentioned how like they're willing to bring in Bill Belichick to coach football, but that went horribly. That didn't go well at all.
That's exactly right.
And you know who wasn't up for the Alabama job? What at the time you could have argued it was the best job in college football. You know who wasn't up for that job? Bill Belichick. Because the NFL and college football are not the same thing, and the NBA and college basketball, they are not the same thing. And I think Mike Malone's really going to struggle. And it's not like a knowledge thing because he's a smart enough guy that he's gonna know how to draw up good sets, and he's gonna know who his best players are, and he'll be fine in that regard. It's dealing with 18 to 24-year-olds is very different than dealing with adults who don't have to go to class, who only have to show up and play basketball. And college basketball looks more and more like a pro style thing. And, every year with the money that these guys are making and all those things. But ultimately, this is, I don't know. Maybe I'm allowing the shock of it to ruin my perspective. But I think this is going to go terribly for North Carolina. So Duke is going to continue reigning and sitting atop of the ACC. Maybe Clemson gives them a little push in there at some point. We'll see. But I just, man, just incredible, incredible, incredible. So the portal opens up tonight at midnight. So Michael Malone, he's going to have the opportunity to change people's opinions really quickly. I just don't know who's lining up to play for Mike Malone. Jeez. Anyway, people are lining up to play for Dusty May. And he has an opportunity to win the national championship tonight. Former, guy who, went to IU, was a student manager under Coach Knight. And, I know that if Michigan wins tonight, there's going to be IU fans not happy because people were clamoring for Dusty May before he even took the Michigan job. But, I mean, what he's built at Michigan so quickly is just so impressive. Like they just beat the brakes off of an Arizona team that looked like the best team in the country before they played Michigan. And they did it without their best player. Yaxel Lindenborg played 14 minutes. They didn't need him at all to beat, again, an Arizona team that looked like the best team in college basketball. And Michigan's just operating at a different level right now. Everything that they needed to do to beat Arizona, they did in abundance. They shot 12 of 27 from three. Immediately, when you shoot the ball that well, you immediately have an excellent chance. They outscored Arizona by 18 from behind the three-point line. For Arizona, that's not normally a big deal, but Michigan didn't allow them to impose their will in the areas where they had all tournament long. Arizona was third in the country in free throw attempts, averaging about 27 per game. They only took 22 free throws against Michigan, and they shot them poorly on top of that. 15 of 22 from the foul line. Not very good. Michigan was 13 of 16. So they didn't get dominated at the foul line despite having some players who got into foul trouble early. Okay. Arizona only out-rebounded Michigan by 4. Okay. So they held their own on the glass. They had 11 offensive rebounds of their own. Okay. So even though they gave up 18 offensive rebounds to Arizona, they still produced themselves a solid amount of second chance opportunities. Michigan matched Arizona's points in the paint, and Arizona was never going to win that game if they allowed for Michigan to match them bucket for bucket inside of the painted area. Okay. The foul trouble thing didn't matter because not only did Michigan's players get in foul trouble, whether it was Lindenborg or Cadeau or Mara or whoever it was, some of the better players for Arizona also got into foul trouble. So everything we saw from Michigan was so impressive. And look, if they play at that same level, then they're going to beat UConn. They'll cover the 6.5. They played what felt like a pretty perfect game. The one thing about Michigan, they are prone to turning the basketball over. They turned it over 13 times against Arizona. That's been kind of the one area of the season where you could look and point and say, hey, like their ball security isn't great. Okay. So Michigan just, if they don't turn the ball over tonight, then you have to really like their chances. I like them to win. I don't know if they cover. I think we're going to get a big game from Alex Caravan, who's just kind of due to have one of those nights. So the most impressive thing, though, from Michigan's win against Arizona was their defense. Arizona didn't get anything easy. Everything in the half court was contested. It was a lot of self-creation for Arizona, a lot of guys trying to play one-on-one. And there are two things in basketball that are contagious. Ball movement is contagious, and ball hogging is also contagious. Michigan's defense made ball hogging contagious for Arizona. There were so many possessions where Arizona just pounded the ball into dust, and then they'd take a bad shot, and then Michigan did a good job of closing out possessions by defensive rebounding. It was the total opposite for Michigan on offense. Everything they did led to a player moving toward the basket or getting an open catch. Their offense was just so much easier than Arizona's. And whoever gets easier shots usually wins. And Michigan got significantly easier shots than Arizona did. And that's why they blew out a really good Arizona team. They've now beaten every team that they've played pretty handily. They beat Howard by 21, St. Louis by 23, Alabama by 13, Tennessee by 33, and Arizona by 18. Sounds pretty similar to UConn's dominant run from 2 years ago, where they crushed everybody. And look, if Michigan beats UConn by 20 tonight, they're going to have, a real claim to potentially having the most dominant run in March Madness history. But they got to win by 20 in order for that to even be a conversation. I don't think that they're going to do that. I think UConn's going to play them really tough tonight because that's just what UConn does. And we're going to have Seth Greenberg from ESPN on here in about 3 minutes to talk about tonight's national title game between Michigan and UConn.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, we are now joined by the coach, Seth Greenberg. You see him all the time on ESPN, whether that's Get Up, First Take. He does a great job covering college basketball over at ESPN. Hey, Coach, thanks for taking a couple minutes to hop on the show.
Is there a fake Jonathan Smith? I mean, I was trying to find out, are you the one, the only? I mean, I know it's a common name, so I just trying to figure out where you stand in the hierarchy.
So the joke is Jonathan Smith sounds like a name you would give to someone who was put into witness protection. And so and I was not. This is my real name for some reason. My family has a lot of common names like this too.
I got it. So you just one of many Jonathans.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Coach, I'm really curious. I'm assuming you saw, Mike Malone. It was just announced he's been hired by North Carolina. What do you make of the hire?
I think it's a great hire. Nice to have to hire the right staff, people that are in tune with the business of college basketball. But the business of college basketball is very similar to the business of the NBA in terms of roster construction, roster management. Recruiting is more transactional. Recruiting is more done through third parties. No different than cultivating. You used to cultivate families and coaches and grassroots coaches, and now it's more of the, you've got to find that who are the decision makers in the process. But I've known Michael since he's a kid. He's a terrific coach. He's lived the life. The work will not be a burden. I think a lot of times when guys get into college coaching, they don't realize that there is no off season. I think he'll understand that. So, I think Carolina, if they couldn't get Billy Donovan, I thought that, Michael's going to do a great job. He's good people.
I'm really interested to see how he does, just because he's never coached in college basketball before, from my knowledge at least. When I watch the NBA and when I watch college basketball, they feel really different in terms of just like the style of play. How do you think he's going to adjust to that side of it?
Actually, I think they're very similar these days. Everyone's playing 5 out. Everyone's playing spreads. Everyone's playing an extra ball handler. Everyone's shooting a 3. Everyone's playing off analytics. Obviously 24-second clock's different from 30-second clock, but the games are very, very similar in terms of the way they're being played at the highest level. Now, look, Dan Hurley plays it differently. It's more of a European style. Dusty May plays more maybe an NBA style. You go throughout the landscape of college basketball, more and more people are playing 5 out. They're playing skilled 4 guys. The big guys can handle the ball. You can run your offense through them. I mean, he ran his offense through his 5 guy basically his whole time in Denver. So, I don't think that's a big change. The business is different. The relentlessness, the day-to-day dealing with recruiting and roster construction, roster management, and, each and every year you're rebuilding your roster. Like in the NBA, you sign guys for long-term contracts. In college, it's a year-to-year basically deal. Look at the number of people who are in the portal right now. So that's where the job is different.
Joined by Seth Greenberg from ESPN, talking about Mike Malone being hired by North Carolina. You mentioned how, these coaches, they're tasked with having to rebuild their rosters every year. What is the most important thing for these coaches that they have to find in the portal year in and year out to be able to contend? I understand it's going to be a little bit different for every coach depending on their style and how they like to play. But is there like a trend that you've noticed in terms of like when teams find this kind of player in the portal, they tend to be set up a little bit better to compete going forward?
You got to get guys with high character. You got to get guys to fit your system. You got to get guys that are competitive and will buy into roles. You got to get guys that will give up a little bit of themselves for the good of the group. You got to get guys that are about winning. You've got to make sure the chemistry of your team is correct and you don't have guys that sabotage your locker room. So, you're evaluating talent, you're evaluating attitude, you're evaluating skill, work ethic. There's so many things that go into it.
And you mentioned skill and work ethic and teams that compete. And that is, I think those are all traits that you have to use, or at least for me, come to the front of my mind when I think about Michigan and Uconn. I think when a lot of people watch those teams, you're very much drawn to the offense. You mentioned the kind of the NBA style that Michigan plays, the European style that Uconn plays. In terms of their Final Four games, I was incredibly impressed by the defense of each team, like holding, Illinois to only 3 assists, holding Arizona to only 5 assists. When you watch those teams defensively, what stands out and what are you looking forward to watching tonight?
Well, Michigan's length is just, they swallow you up. They overwhelm you with their size and their length. They take up the air space of the game because of their size and length. They get deflections because of their length. They're hard to score, but they take away the paint and they take away the rim. Some teams take away the paint but can't take away the rim. They take away the paint, the rim, and the 3. That's a pretty good combination.
Yeah, it's really tough to score when he can take away all all three of those things. Joined by Seth Greenberg from ESPN. You can hear him on Get Up, First Take, College Game Day on Saturday mornings as well during the college basketball season. What is it about Dan Hurley where he is just able to consistently year in and year out not only have good teams, but consistently have these tough and disciplined teams that he's able to put out on the floor every night?
Well, he's done a good job in terms of recruiting. He basically has done a good job of retention. He's done a good job of recruiting the right freshmen, and he's done a good job of recruiting guys in the portal that fit, that are multiple-year portal guys. So what does that enable you to do? It enables you to have some continuity if you could retain them and have identity and culture, which is so important.
And it feels really different from Dusty May at Michigan. This is his second year there, and he's rebuilt it so quickly. What do you think has allowed him to turn things around as quickly as he has?
He hit 4 for 4. Actually, if you include Namari Burnett, he's gone 5 for 5 in the portal. All 5 guys are portal guys. Burnett, a multiple-year guy, but they hit a home run with Burnett. They hit a home run with Mara. They hit a home run with Maurice Johnson. They hit a home run with Yaxel, and they hit a home run with Elliott. So he did that, and then obviously McKinney is a very, very talented freshman. They retained from last year Burnett. They retained Gale. They retained Kaysen. So there's some continuity there. But, finding the right guys. They went to the portal and got the right guys.
Joined by Coach Seth Greenberg. You can hear him on ESPN, Get Up, First Take, and all of your college basketball coverage. The Mara get in the portal for Michigan, I find it really interesting because when you watched him at UCLA and you compare it to how he's playing at Michigan, it doesn't even look like the same player. The role he's in is entirely different. Is entirely different. How difficult is it to look at a player in one role and know that he's going to work in an entirely different one?
Well, I think that Dusty's done a really good job. It's not a different role. It's his role that he should be playing. Mick's system is different than Dusty's system. So, Mick stays to his system: physicality, toughness, rebounding, pounding in the paint. Dusty's system allows a guy to step out, play in the high post, be a passer, be a facilitator, be a rim protector, but then he's in drop coverage where he's protecting the front of the rim. So there's a lot of, just difference in systems. And he's really done a good job Dusty's done a good job of putting a guy in position to play to his strengths, quite honestly.
Yeah, and I love watching both of these teams play, Coach, because I just find their offenses just to be so appealing and easy to watch. I think one of the things that I've noticed that these teams do really well is, like, for example, whenever I watch Arkansas play, they'll come out and they'll run their offense. But when there's about 7 seconds left on the shot clock, they found Acuff and they cleared out and he went to work. I've been really impressed by, I think, Uconn and Michigan, and I think Iowa did a really good job of this as well, of just staying in their offense for the full duration of the shot clock. Am I off on that? Am I seeing things? Have you noticed that?
You're totally off on that because you fit your system to your personnel. So if you have Darius Acuff, any tricky play you're going to run at the end of a shot clock or continue is not as good as Darius Acuff. You're going and getting in the lane and either scoring, throwing a lob pass, or kicking out for a three. It's all about the quality of shot. Do you get a good shot? I think they got pretty good shots at Arkansas. So, there's different ways to be successful. You look at your team. All right, why does Iowa do that? Well, Iowa at the end of shot clocks wanted to get the ball to who? You're a Big Ten guy. You should know this. Who they want to get the ball to? Bennett Sturtz. Yeah, he was either a double gap or a ball screen. They got it to him out of their actions and their flows, but they got the ball to Bennett Sturtz. And, that's good coaching. Of course, you want the ball in your best player's hands. And how you get him there, it wasn't like all of a sudden at the end of a shot clock. It was after probably multiple touches and a ball reversal and maybe a shallow cut up the middle that Darius would get the ball. That's called good coaching. I have a question for you. When Darius got the ball there, did he most times score or get an assist?
Yes, sir. He did. I think, to your point, and you're way smarter than I am, obviously. I think that more of the point that I was trying to look at. I just feel like, and maybe Arkansas was a bad example because, as you said, like it's always a great idea to give a guy as good as Darius Acuff the ball. I feel like the off ball movement for these two teams throughout the duration of the shot clock, it feels constant. Whereas when I watch other teams, I feel like there's more standing around, if that makes sense.
Well, you fit your system, and you're like, what is your system? I mean, at the end of a shot clock, most times the ball's in Elliot Cadeau's hands, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean that's coaching. That's systems. That's what Coach McCollum's system is. I mean, but the ball's going to end up in Bennett Sturt's hands at the end of the shot clock, and he's going to end up probably trying to make a play. If you really watch a lot of film on Iowa, which I actually have done, and did a videotape on them for one of our shows. Why do teams deny Bennett Sturtz the ball at the end of the shot clock?
Because he's their best player, and they want to get it back to him.
Yeah, and the reason people, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he's their best player. They want to get him the ball at the end of the shot clock because he's going to make a play. So, I mean, that, again, some teams are more aesthetically, I guess, attracted to some, but in the end, you either want to get the ball to your best shooter at the end of the shot clock, or you want to get the ball to a guy who can get it to your best shooter at the end of the shot clock. That's kind of the essence of coaching. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And as a coach, you've got to say, right, look at my team, and what's the best way I can do that? If that makes sense to you.
Yes, sir. It does. Joined by Seth Greenberg. You can catch him on ESPN. I want to go back to the game tonight. What are the most important things for Michigan and UConn? What does UConn need to do tonight to have a chance to win the game? Feels like a lot of people really like Michigan. I personally don't like to bet against Coach Hurley, but what are some of the things that UConn needs to do to have a chance against the Michigan team that's really rolling right now?
They've got to control the tempo and rhythm of the game. They've got to make Elliot Cadeau a scorer and take the ball and take away his assist so he doesn't impact the game two ways. They're going to have to rebound the basketball. And obviously they have tough matchups on Leninburg. And then, finally, I think they're going to have to make, I'd say, 10 threes. They made 11 the other night in their win. I'd say they have to make at least 10 threes. It's got to be a 60-point game.
Okay. What about for Michigan, and how does Lindenborg coming into the game banged up? How does that impact the way that they play?
Well, he's the toughest matchup that UConn has. It's a brutal matchup for UConn because if you start Solo and Solo does play, he's going to probably have to guard Burnett, which is a tough matchup. And then that means that Braylon Mullen's going to have to guard Leninburg, and he's going to have to keep him off the glass. He's going to have to guard him on the perimeter. He's going to have to guard him on the bounce. 6'9", 7'4" wingspan. That's a tough matchup. Now, when UConn goes to their bench, they've got Jaden Ross and Jalen Stewart. Those are probably better matchups for Yaxel. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's handled.
Who do you like tonight?
I have Michigan. If everyone's healthy, I have Michigan.
That's kind of how I feel about it as well. But then again, it's Coach Hurley, and they've got some magic up there at UConn or something to be able to stay in all these games. So, Coach, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk with me.
I'm just happy I spoke. I'm happy I spoke to you and not an imposter.
Me too, Coach. Me too. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thanks for having me. All right.
See you, Coach. That is Seth Greenberg. You can catch him on ESPN. Get up in the morning. You can catch him on First Take. And of course, all of your college basketball coverage as well. When we come back here in about 3 minutes, final thoughts on Michigan and UConn tonight.
minutes in today's sports world. It's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith. Follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, 1430 a.m. if you're driving around in your car. Big thanks to Seth Greenberg for coming on in that last segment. He got after me a little bit there. It's okay, though. It's kind of fun. He likes Michigan tonight. I like Michigan tonight in a close game. If you have a take on who wins the game tonight, 317-228-1430. That is the number. If you want to call in and tell me who you like tonight between Uconn and Michigan. Chris, you like Michigan, correct?
I'm siding with Michigan. Final answer.
Everybody likes Michigan, man. And we know what that means. Sack man, go ahead and put the house on Uconn. Everybody is taking Michigan to win this game. And, you know, the dark magic, it is it's real. It's real up there in Connecticut. So see Fitch saying Michigan by 20. I don't know, man.
I wouldn't go
see
that
Fitch,
far.
call in, man.
Yeah.
You haven't called in yet. I'm a little offended. Gritty, you too. I see you guys both over there in the YouTube chat. I think you guys can get away. Whatever. I like Michigan tonight for every reason you've probably already heard. They have an immense amount of size. They are incredibly athletic. They have so much talent on their roster. Like Yaxel Lindenborg, if he's healthy, he's the best player on the floor tonight. He's the best player on the floor. And so, you know, they're big. They defend. They rebound. They make open threes. They have good guard play. You can just run through it. Okay? They beat Arizona by 18 for crying out loud. And then you got Uconn, who needed a 38-foot prayer in order to beat Duke just to get to the Final Four. And then they played a really good Illinois team, and it looked like they were going to blow them out. And then they went on like a 4.5-minute stretch where they just didn't score. Really, you know, that's what happened. And so it feels like you have this perfect team in Michigan that just seems to check every single box. Can shoot, good guard play, defends, has a ton of size, has the best player on the floor, so on and so forth. And then you have Uconn, who, you know, has this, you know, like obviously a really good team. Like you don't win 34 games and get to the national championship game if you aren't really good. But Danny Hurley said it himself. Sometimes the best team in the tournament doesn't always win the NCAA tournament. Do you have that audio? It look- One game, and Alex Caravan is due. I'm just saying that matters. Water finds its level. He's 2 for his last 13 from 3. He's bound to get it going at some point. And if he has a stretch where, he hits like 4 threes in a row and all of a sudden UConn's up by 9. I mean, like that's a big blow. That is something that can swing the game for you if you're UConn. And again, Alex Caravan's due. Right? Braylon Mullins has been shooting the ball really well. You've got Michigan coming off of a game where they just shot 44% from 3. I don't think they're going to do that again. They might. It's very possible, right? This is the beauty of one game. This is why March Madness is awesome. Because anything can happen on any given night. And even though, Michigan looks unbeatable right now, UConn could beat them. It's very possible. Just like how, Arizona looked borderline unbeatable. And then Michigan beat them by 18. If Michigan can beat Arizona by 18, then UConn can absolutely win this game tonight. With that being said, I'm not picking UConn. I'm picking Michigan, and I don't like it because I don't like picking against Danny Hurley. And he is the ultimate X factor in all of this. The guy's the best coach in college basketball. All that guy does is show up to the arena and win. This isn't even like one of his better UConn teams, and they're 34-5. And they're incredibly tough. They are incredibly disciplined, and you have to have both of those things if you're going to beat a team that is better than you are. You have to have both of them, because look, teams that are undisciplined and not tough, they barely beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. If you're undisciplined and not tough, you're not beating Michigan. It's not going to happen. The thing about Michigan, and in order for them to beat UConn tonight, this is what has to happen. They have to out-execute them. Like, that is how you beat UConn. That is how you do it. Because no one is going to out-tough or out-discipline this UConn team. Because they're just a really, really good basketball team that is the toughest and the most disciplined team in college basketball. And I kind of want UConn to win, because if UConn wins tonight, then we get some history. Alex Caravan would be the first player since UCLA seniors in 1975 to win 3 championships in 4 years. Here he is talking about the chance to win another national title. Go to the on our show sheet. If you go to the "What if UConn wins" spot, that clip right there. Once you get it pulled up, I can introduce it again. It's only day 4. Here is Alex Caravan, UConn senior, talking about the opportunity to win his 3rd national title in 4 years.
Yeah.
Alex Caravan right there, UConn senior with an opportunity to win his 3rd national title in 4 years. I bet it hasn't felt real, like you said in that clip. No one rolls into college basketball and just wins this much. Just incredible stuff. If UCLA, if UConn is able to win tonight, then they move into some rarefied air with some John Wooden coached UCLA teams, and again, Alex Caravan Will be the first player since the UCLA seniors in 1975 to win 3 national titles in 4 years. Danny Hurley would somehow raise his status within college basketball to a new level. It's hard to think that it could get any higher than what it's currently at, but I mean, it would. Like 3 national titles in 4 years is just incredible. And they would also spoil what has been one of the best runs we've seen in March Madness history. I mean, Michigan has just done away with everybody that they've played. They beat Howard by 21. They beat St. Louis by 23. They beat Tennessee by 33. They beat Alabama by 13. They just beat Arizona by 18. Like, they've just been rolling through teams, and they feel completely unstoppable. But UConn has Danny Hurley. And, that's all that you need sometimes. They got Danny Hurley and a bunch of experienced dudes, and look, that experience is gonna help UConn tonight. We saw it help them beat Duke. If Alex Caravan isn't a senior, and he, for those who don't know, he had the assist to Braylon Mullins on that game winner. Any other player probably chucks the ball up when Alex Caravan gets it. But he pauses because he knows that he has time, and he gives the ball up to Braylon Mullins, and then Mullins, knocks down a 38-footer. And, next thing you know, UConn's playing for a national title. So just incredible stuff from UConn, whether they win or lose. Incredible stuff from Michigan as well. They are the better team. They should win tonight. But again, the best team doesn't always win. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the best show in Indy. More breaking news. Not as big here. The Bulls fired their executive vice president of basketball operations. They're going to clean house. They're in Chicago, which is, just another reason why I'm surprised that Billy Donovan hasn't left. I mean, like that Bull, like Chicago, the Bulls are about to get absolutely blown up. They're about to fire everybody. They're completely about to clean house. Seemed like this was a good opportunity for Billy Donovan to move from the Bulls to the best job in college basketball. And, North Carolina ends up with Mike Malone. Chris, you told me during the break that Mike Malone's daughter plays volleyball for North Carolina?
That is true. Was not ready to expand on that, but yes, Mike Malone has a daughter enrolled at, here we go, at University of North Carolina, and her name's Bridget. She enrolled in 2025 as a gray shirt freshman volleyball player. There you go.
How old is Mike Malone? I thought he was, like in his 60s. I guess not. Yeah, and of course, yeah, it's not, the one thing that Google is usually really good for is age, and for some reason, it's not going to tell me how old Michael Malone is.
54.
Oh, yep, there it is. Yeah. So him having a daughter in college, that makes sense. I thought he was older. He looks older than that.
A little bit.
Then again, when Seth Greenberg said that he'd known Mike since he was a kid, that should have given it away that he was younger than I realized.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, today's show's been so good. If you missed it, you're gonna want to go back and listen at a minimum to JonathIN, JonathOUT, where we had a blast. A new segment on the show there. Again, John Buzzer chiming in saying, "Yep, Billy Donovan needs to find the exit ramp. It's time." Because there's absolutely nothing going on well with the Chicago Bulls. They had the whole Jay Nivey thing. They didn't handle that whole thing very well. They are, in the process of cleaning house. And then, you got Reinsdorf, who doesn't want to win anything. He just, he wants to make the play in, and then he's fine with that. So again, very surprised that Mike Malone ended up being the guy for the Tar Heels as opposed to a guy like Billy Donovan or a Nate Oates or, anyone else like that. But hey, look, those, the decision makers at North Carolina, certainly they'll get this hire right after hiring Hubert Davis. So anyway, last thing here, Indiana State doesn't have a basketball roster right now. And I saw some Indiana State fans, all 4 of them, freaking out about that. I think it's a good thing. They went 11-21, overall 4-16 in their conference. they should be glad that everybody left. They might actually be able to be good. And this is one of the beauties of the transfer portal. If you have a bad team, it is so easy to just clean house and restart. Right? And this is one of the advantages for Mike Malone at North Carolina. He's going to be able to show up and bring in guys that he likes immediately. And everyone who knows Mike Malone, they say that dude just loves basketball. You heard Seth Greenberg say it in that last segment where he talked about how like Mike Malone isn't going too shy away from the work. He's going to go into it and really enjoy it. And so, I mean, look, if you put in the work, and look, Mike Malone's a really, really smart coach. If he, puts in the work, I'm assuming North Carolina has a GM of their basketball operation. So if they can identify the right players, then they'll win games quickly because Mike Malone is a good coach. I just don't know how he's going to mesh with, guys that are this young. Like he didn't really like playing young players when he was the head coach at Denver. It took him a minute to trust guys like Christian Brown, and he leaves, and all of a sudden Peyton Watson's having the best year of his career, and so on. So I'm very intrigued by it. Didn't think that it was the best hire that they could have made, but at the same time, that's a guy who's won an NBA championship. So who am I to speak out against that guy? But again, tonight I like Michigan. Can't wait for the games tonight. It's going to be a blast. We'll have it all covered for you tomorrow from noon to 3. Chris likes Michigan. I like Michigan. So that means that you should probably bet on Uconn. So that's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you again for tuning in. Go subscribe to the YouTube page, Indy Sports Ticket. Follow me on X, __ Jonathan Smith. Follow Chris on X. I don't know you're at.
At Oreo on air.
There you go. And then follow us at Ticket1430 as well. We will talk to you tomorrow starting at noon.